Rent versus buy. What should you do? It is sort of like a timeless debate in the real estate industry. Buyers debate it amongst themselves. Parents debate it with their children. Buy a house, rent a house. I don't want to buy. I don't want a responsibility. So in Princeton today, the situations where renting can actually make more financial sense in the short term, I think. Long term, I think you should own real estate. So part of it is your timing. If you're relocating to Princeton, moving from New York City, moving from California, and you're just trying to figure out the schools, and you're not sure you're going to stay here, maybe it's a temporary relocation, right? Renting can be the absolutely smart move. So today we're going to take a look at costs, renting versus buying in Princeton. So welcome to the Wilton Report. I'm Josh Wilton, and I co-own and run the #1 boutique real estate company here in Central Jersey, the only locally owned real estate company in Princeton, right? The rest are franchises. And I've helped thousands of people buy and sell real estate, which gives me a front row seat to help you make smarter decisions. It's that simple. So in this video, we're just going to take a very simple look at rent versus buy. We're going to do some basic costs of buying. We're not going to get into selling. Did that on a separate video. You can check that out. I'll link it in the comments, right? But we're going to look at the monthly cost difference between renting and buying. We're going to look at when buying makes more sense, when renting makes more sense. And I'm going to give you a couple of simple case studies just to kind of model your decision-making from. Obviously, if you have questions, you just reach out to us and let us know. So today, interest rates are bouncing around in the sixes, right? The average single-family home price in Princeton is about $1.7 million. West Windsor is about 1.1. Montgomery is about 1.1. You know, Hopewell's in the 9s. Lawrenceville's in the 7s. So, like, it's not exactly cheap to buy a house. I want to move to Princeton. I don't know how long I want to live there. You know what I mean? Like, should I rent or I buy? So like all these things come into account when you're buying a house. So I figured today we're just going to do a very simple take on real estate. So there's a house on Harris Road that is for rent right now. It's a very good case study. It's a 4-bedroom, 4-bath house for rent. It's nice, newer build. The landlord is asking $7,800 a month. And ironically, in Princeton, West Windsor, Montgomery, there's the missing middle when you're trying to buy a house, meaning like the, let's say 700 to 1.5 single family house. The missing segment for tenants is luxury real estate. This I would not call luxury, but even at 1.7 million, I wouldn't call it luxury, but it's hard to get a nice single family house to rent in Princeton. Okay. So here's the math: 4 bedrooms, 4 bath, for rent, $7,800. If you move to town and you live in it for 2 years, you just paid $187,200 in rent. So you just paid $200,000 in rent. In order to get in, you need the first month's rent plus a month and a half security deposit. So it's another $20,000. So to live in this house for 2 years, right, as a tenant, it costs you $200,000. Full on. To live in it 1 year, it's probably like $100,000, a little bit more just with the security deposit, which you get back. If you were to buy this house, right, let's just assume the purchase price is $1.2 million, right, which is what Redfin had it at online. I didn't do any hard analysis on this, right, but let's just assume it's $1.2 million. Let's assume the down payment's $240,000, 20%, right, and let's assume the loan amount is $960,000. Okay. The closing costs are an additional $25,000 to $30,000. So you have to come up with $240,000 down, another, let's just say $30,000 in closing costs, right? And your monthly payment, your mortgage payment is $6,000 plus taxes, $2,000, right? So your monthly payment's in the $8,000 range. So it's cheaper to rent? No, because it's for rent at $7,800, right? If you're going to buy it, your payment is about $8,300, $8,400. So is it cheaper to buy? You know, is it cheaper to rent? Hard to say. If you rent it for 2 years, you're out $200,000. You have nothing to show for it. You have no equity gain. You have no appreciation. You have no tax hedge. The rent is definitely going up 3% a year. At least your mortgage rate is fixed, hopefully. Don't buy short-term ARMs. They're dumb. So again, is it better to rent or buy this property? Hard to say. Again, if you're moving to town for 1 year, I do not recommend buying a property. If you're here to stay, then buy a property, right? Take your time, buy a property. A lot of people do move to Princeton and rent in much smaller units before they buy the house that they want. So another example that I can show you is a Palmer Square studio. This is actively for rent for $2,200, right? Don't let the big brick building fool you. It's a 0 bedroom. It's a studio, and you can rent it for $2,200, right? If you live in it for 3 years, and 3 years seems like a long time, it's not. It's a blink of an eye. You just spent $79,000, $80,000 in rent, right? Landlord will be very appreciative because you're making the money, but what does it cost to buy a Palmer Square studio? So again, one just sold, and that's a picture of the inside, not that fancy, for $365,000. That is bad photography, by the way. Fire that agent, right? So what does it cost? $365,000. Assume 20% down, and actually you do need a little bit more, usually to buy in Palmer Square. So that's $73,000. The loan amount is $292,000, right? So again, your closing costs. Let's just budget $18,000. I'll round it up to that. So your total cash to close is $80,000 to $90,000. Well, you just paid that in rent, right? So you just paid $80,000. Your cash to close $80,000. However, you still have to pay your mortgage, which is another $2,735 a month, right? So if you live in it for 3 years after you bought it, you're spending $100,000 in payments to the bank. At least you're earning some equity on it. But you had to come up with another $90,000 to sell it. And you're probably not making massive appreciation on the unit. Condos don't tend to appreciate as fast as single families. So I would say that, if you're looking for a Palmer Square studio and you're going to live in it for a couple to a few years, it's not going to kill you to rent. I'd say anything over 3 to 5 years, if you're committed, and then maybe you hang on to it as your own investment property when you're done, right? It definitely makes sense to buy the house. But a lot of times people look at it and they don't quite understand the math. So 20% down on a $365 purchase, $73,000. If you don't have it, you're renting because it's kind of difficult to get financing in there. As a first-time home buyer, you don't necessarily need 20% down. You can buy something with 5% down, right? So if you buy something with 5% down, well, then the math and the calculus changes quite dramatically, right? So, you can buy things in Princeton. There's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath for sale today for $675. Buy it. It's not getting any cheaper. Anything under $1 million, just buy it. Don't think about it too hard. So, how you're looking at your long-term cash flow, what you need out of pocket, what you're going to pay in rent, it all sort of depends. I think 0 to 2 to 3 years, if you're going to be here, and even if you're a graduate student and you're just going to be here for like 4 or 5 years, and then you're moving on and you're not staying in Princeton, rent, right? Rent. If you're committed to staying in the market, then buy, right? Anything over that 4-year mark, I think it kind of flips and you're like, wow, I'm paying a lot in rent. I should buy a house. Ideal to know that ahead of time, not always possible, right? Life happens. But again, if you live in a Palmer Square studio at $2,200 a month, it's $80,000. If you buy it, it's $80,000 in mortgage payments. Well, it's $98,000 in mortgage payments plus your closing costs. So, it's definitely on the slightly monthly payment level cheaper to rent. But at the same time, you don't get the tax break. You're not getting the appreciation. You're not getting the equity. You're paying a landlord to go on vacation with your money. So it's not an ideal scenario long term. Short term, smart. Long term, not so smart. So, that's the basics on renting versus buying. So again, a big part of it is talking to professionals, like talking to your CPA, talking to an experienced broker who can do the math for you. Like, what has been the appreciation in the market that you're looking at? Is it expected to continue? Inventory going up or down? Like, what is the forecast for the market? Because if you're buying in a market where the inventory is shifting, right, and prices might soften, which is really not happening in most places in Mercer County. I think out in the western part of the county, it's starting to happen, but in Princeton, it's not going to happen. Then, maybe you buy and you hold it as your own investment property, right? But you have to be committed to holding it for the duration, not 1 year, 2 years to try to flip it. So again, if you're thinking of renting or buying, there's a huge difference. Just reach out. We're happy to have a consultation with you. We cover every town in Mercer County. So just whatever town you're looking in, whether you want to rent or you want to buy, just give us a call, 609-773-8054. As always, my name is Josh Wilton. This is the Wilton Report, and I'll see you next time.